I call it sometimes leadership with blinkers on because, like horses, blinkers, because if you try and focus on everything, you focus on nothing.
The things we hear is, I don't want to drive a spaceship to Waitrose, thanks, I could just drive a car.
You won't necessarily have all the answers, but that's okay.
Hello and welcome to Women in the Driving Seat. This is the one on electric cars. It's a small little topic. I don't know if anyone's really heard much about them in the last 5 years. We're going to be looking at all sorts of thorny issues, why women aren't buying them in the same number that men are, how you start a business in this sector, jobs and roles in the charging and energy industry, and more. I'm very pleased to welcome my two brilliant guests for today. We have Melanie Lane, CEO of Podpoint, and Rebecca Day, co-founder. I'm going to say founder of She's Electric. Thank you both very much for being here. I'm very grateful. A little bit on bios before we crack on to the main bit of the podcast. Rebecca. Bex is the CEO of Still Curious and co-founder of She's Electric. She started a Save the World club from her garden shed when she was 8. And despite a detour through the worlds of luxury fashion and automotive, she is still trying to channel her climate anxiety into action. She has a 5-year-old son called Redford and lives in Stroud with her mother because she is a glutton for dungarees and judgment. I hear you. Mel is the CEO of Podpoint, formerly CEO of New Motion / Shell Recharge Solutions. The last decade of her career has been spent working on challenges associated with the energy transition in different sectors. Since a young age, she has had a passion for making a difference and spearheading change, and her current role gives her the opportunity to do that in spades. Outside of work, she is mum to 3 amazing children, loves the outdoors, and serves on the board of one of the world's largest anti-human trafficking and modern-day slavery organisations. We have to come back to that. I don't think anyone else in this podcast series is going to have that on their bio. But first up, first section, we're straight into plate spinning and balls dropped. Bex, tell me about your week.
I was thinking about this morning, actually, and surprisingly, I haven't actually dropped a ball yet, but it is only Wednesday. So there is still...
halfway through.
I know, that's what I thought. We're still, on the way. Plenty of time for me to drop a ball. But in terms of plate spinning, it's been just a wild start to the year. As you know, running an initiative like She's Electric, also running an agency, and also we're launching something new called What Women Want this year as well, because there's just not enough going on. So trying to manage all of those plates at once is pretty nuts. In terms of personal sort of plate spinning, balls dropped, as you see, I've got a 5-year-old. He's going through that kind of stage where he's learning to negotiate, let's put it that way, and he seems very good at it. And at the moment, trying to get him to sleep in his own bed is the big thing. I can't, so I'm just going with it and allowing him into my room at all hours of the morning, which my mother is not very impressed with, but that's what.
Hence the judgment.
That's just one of the few things that, But yes, that
We'll come back to that. I have to just ask you, what's What Women Want, very briefly?
What Women Want is something that was run 30 years ago by Lynn Franks on the South Bank, and it was incredible, actually. It's pre-internet.
Lynn Franks as in Ab Fab?
As in Lynn Franks, yes. Yeah. She is wonderful. She is in her mid to late 70s now. She has 10 times more energy than I do. Incredible person to be around. 30 years ago, ran it with Sinead O'Connor, Jermaine Greer, all sorts of Chrissy Hind, and they did a postcard campaign that went out to the entirety of the UK to women that they could fill in via the Body Shop or Cosmopolitan magazine, asking them what they wanted, and they could write it in their own words. So anything from I want to feel safe or I want a man, deliver me one now. I mean, it went the whole range. So 30 years on, we're going to try and find out what has changed. Spoiler alert, not as much as it should have, and what hasn't changed. And create some really great content around that.
Wow.
So,
Damn it, we could have done an episode on that.
Well,
what have you been up to?
So I've had a busy week. So we did an update to the market on Monday. So that's really defined my professional week. That's been quite challenging. I think coming and working in a listed environment, having kind of not been in that environment before, is always tricky. And it's hard when you're giving updates to the market where you can't talk about all the things that you're doing in the background and the journey that you're on. So there's been a lot of kind of conversations with shareholders and staff this week, and just, really trying to maintain the energy and the momentum of the organisation, despite the fact that it's a really bumpy industry at the moment. I don't think that's different to any other year. There's always been forecasts of EV sales and EV adoption, and I've never had a year where it's exactly what they said it was going to be.
Is that, by the way, is that a good thing because it keeps things interesting, or do you think I'd like some stability? It keeps things
interesting. I think at the moment it's just quite an uncertain environment in the EV world. And I think there's been a lot of negative news flow generally about EV and the kind of energy transition. And I think there could be more that, we, the government, others could do to just help kind of create much more of a positive news flow. So I feel really positive. The energy transition is happening and electrification is happening. And yes, it will be a bit bumpy, but that's okay. The trajectory is very much set. And so in that context, I feel really confident about the future, both of the company that I'm leading, but also the industry. But I think, it would be good just to get some more energy and positive news flow out there. Yeah.
And how has leading a company kind of mixed with your private life this last week?
It's
challenging. You're a mother, right?
Yeah, I've got 3 kids and friends and family are kind of like really super important to me. But really with this job at the moment, when I'm on the job, I'm on the job. And then when I get home, that's when I really try and just be present.
Do you manage that?
Do you know, I live in the countryside, so not too far from you. So I live in Cheltenham and I grew up there. And there is nothing like just being on the hills or in the fresh air or countryside to just, ground yourself. And I think having watched my kids grow up through lots of different stages, the negotiating never stops and they just get better at it.
How old are yours?
So 18, 16 and 12.
So you're nearly out the other side.
You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. I wish that were true.
Well, this is what people. Mine are 11 and 14. I feel like I'm right in the middle of some sort of teenage hell.
You are so about to Oh no! Yeah. You've just got a whole other chapter to come. But that's okay. That's all fine. And I don't think kids. Even my 18-year-old, who's gone to university now. But they have these amazingly long holidays. He's been at home for the last. Well, it feels like a really long time, and he's still not gone back yet to university. So they leave, but they don't leave.
I'm quite pleased about that.
I know. So me too, actually. But yeah. So when I'm on work, I'm on work. When I'm at home, I'm really, really trying to be present and give the people at home what they need. I've got an amazing husband who picks up all sorts of stuff in the background. We've just moved houses, moved countries, and so the list of the to-do list is enormous. And so it's that kind of support structure and network that I think gives me energy. So yeah, it's not easy.
No. Do you think that when you say try to be present at home, does that involve you consciously putting down your phone, consciously not having alerts on your email?
Well, I have to. So I have a work phone, and that's a learning just to be able to kind of keep things separate, and so that if something really important comes in, I can see it. So we run an operational business, so if something happened, then I'm obviously need to be contactable. But I am quite good at compartmentalizing and saying, right, okay, right now I need to focus on this thing here, and then often on the weekend it's no, right now this human being needs all of me, and just focusing on that.
You're going to have to. We have to meet for a coffee in Cheltenham so that you can tell me how that whole thing works.
I call it sometimes.
I definitely haven't nailed that.
Well, I find it. I call it sometimes leadership with blinkers on, because like horses, blinkers. Because if you try and focus on everything, you focus on nothing. And so I often talk about it both at work and at home, where you just kind of, I know there's stuff over here that needs fixing, and I know there's stuff over there that needs doing. And of course, there's a big burning fire over here, But right now, I just need to be like this. And it's a mental image I kind of hold.
Do you think that having a work phone is a big part of that? Because I've never had a separate work phone, and I do wonder whether having an actual physical object that you know is just getting your work emails and work texts and work calls, it's easier to then put it down and leave it alone.
I don't know. So I've never done it before. So I started at Shell before email existed. Okay,
That's
and
how old we all are.
that's how old I am. And so I grew up in the Shell environment. So all of my email, like every single thing that you could associate an email with, like right back in the day. In the back in the day, you didn't have 2 email accounts. You just had an email address. That email address has kind of stayed with me for over 20 years. And so when I left Shell, extracting myself, oh my goodness, the layers of extraction. You know, it's not just kind of leaving a company. That email address was kind of in so many different places. And so I just thought, you know what? I don't want to do that again. I want to have, okay, this is my corporate space and this is personal. So I spent quite a lot of time unpacking my life and compartmentalizing. And part of that was the phone. And yeah, I think it helps. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not something that I would be able to do just with the nature of, being a sort of an entrepreneur. A lot of the overlaps are just immense. I say that, I'm pretty sure there are ways, and some people who do it that way, but just having, like you say, legacy contact details, my mobile number is my mobile number and has been since the dawn of time. So if I was to suddenly get a different number or a different email, I think that would be quite difficult for people. But it's one of the challenges of being a female founder, or a founder. It's just exacerbated sometimes if I'm a single mum. So, it's trying to do all of those things at once and trying to keep on top of WhatsApps, on top of texts, on top of email. I mean, I'm trying to cut down on the social media side of things because it's just wild, the amount of communication. And I do find it hard sometimes to put the phone down and because there's always something to do. And I think that's when you were saying, well, there's a fire over here, you just have to learn to ignore it. It's because you're never going to get to the end of your to-do list. And you're also, there's never not going to be fires everywhere. And I think I am starting to get a bit better at being like, oh yeah, I can feel the heat. It's behind me.
But it's not existential right now. So I'm going to,
But then Bex, you're right in the thick of it, aren't you, at the moment with She's Electric and really trying to get that up and running. You and I, that's how I know you, because I've been co-hosting She's Electric last year, which in case people don't know, it's a national roadshow bringing women and electric cars together. You work with OEMs, can include test drives, panel discussions, question and answers and so on. And I'm fascinated because we know from the data that you've got, She's Electric, and the data that we've got at Auto Trader, that women are off the pace when it comes to buying electric cars. They certainly have been. I'd hope in 2025 maybe that gender gap every year from now on is going to start closing because we've all got to transition to electric. But certainly up until now, electric for a number of reasons hasn't really appealed to women. What's the feedback and the sense of it that you've got from women that have come to She's Electric about electric cars?
Well, it's the fact that is the way it is pretty wild, considering that on the whole women are more sustainable in their decision making, around whether it's to do with the household or the way they live their lives or fashion, all those sorts of things. So actually I was wildly surprised when you were talking about that data, and we obviously were talking about our experiences having worked in the automotive world. I was at Aston Martin for a little while, and as I say, tend to be on the luxury side, but it just came as a huge surprise because I fell for it as well. I was like, well, EVs, they're more sustainable, so women will just buy them. Let's not even bother thinking about like nuanced messaging or what women might want that might be different to how we would sell a car. I think as well with people like Tesla potentially being like the first into the market, there is quite a sort of standard sort of idea of a Tesla driver, and there was also this idea, I think, to show that EV, that the vehicles were in some way more like spaceships and they were a bit different, and I think to a certain degree it kind of went too far and it went down the kind of emperor's new clothes thing, because even now sometimes I will get and do these test drives in these cars and I get out and someone says to me like, isn't it completely game changing? And I'm not like a car lover, and I get out and I'm like, oh yeah, it's wonderful, and I'm thinking it's a car, and I think that we've sort of forgotten that most people, I would say, they're not in love with their cars. I feel bad saying this as an auto trader, but it is a means to an end. It is getting from A to B. And yes, we want it to show the best of ourselves. But
Your
I think
bracelet is very jangly, by the way.
Sorry.
Do you know, it's really like, I'm like, oh, that is catchy.
I should have taken those off. And I gesticulate wildly. But yeah, so yeah, I think as I say, it did surprise me a lot that was the case. And yeah, I think we just need to be better at different people's purchase considerations and journeys and that kind of thing. So yeah, the things we hear is, I don't want to drive a spaceship to Waitrose, thanks. I could just drive a car. Or, you get in, you do a test drive and the product specialist, and I don't know whether they're all just taught this at product specialist school, and you get in and they go, it's just like driving a go-kart, and I'm just like, do I look like I drive lots of go-karts? It's just been that.
So it's like, just normalise it.
Just normalise it.
Don't go to town on the tech. Don't go to town on, you're an early adopter. And this is, because I know that women as well think that, I don't want to be a virtue signaler. I just want to have a car. And the same kind of thing, with charging. I don't know what you guys find at Pod Point. I mean, how is Pod Point going, Mel? Like, how is the whole charging side of ownership and take-up going? Where are the barriers? What are the worries?
Okay, loads of questions in there. So the organisation is going well. So obviously we make and supply chargers for home, for workplace. We've also got a large public network, and we've been around for a long time. So we were one of the kind of the early companies leaning into the energy transition in terms of electric mobility. So there is a lot of passion in the organisation. There's still a lot of purpose behind why people come and work for Pod Point. The market itself for us has been more challenging over the last year. So there was a lot of adoption on the back of the grants, so the OZEV grants. So that really kind of helped encourage certainly our part of the industry. Now that's gone away, and now there is, as we were talking about before, there's just a lot more kind of uncertainty around the EV, the transition to EV. What we see is much lower sales in private EVs and much higher sales going through kind of fleet, lease channels. And so that's a slightly different proposition to the one that we grew up with or built our business on. But so, we're working on that in the background. So the drivers of decision making is maybe more in a kind of a corporate space or fleet managers, as opposed to somebody, okay, I just bought an EV and I want to put a charger at home. So there's lots of different dynamics happening at the moment, all of which will kind of like normalize over time. So the business is going well. The organization is really positive. We've got great people, and for us, the real crux of our challenge is moving away from just selling a box, and I'll kind of link that back to the piece around women and driving. So at the moment, it's been very kind of hardware, and it's a box, and here's a thing, and we're going to sell a thing. And I think the opportunity for companies like Pod Point, who have got an enormous network, so we've got the largest network of installed chargers across the UK, and there is a big need in the UK to manage the flow of energy and the flex of the energy demand and the supply. And I think there's a much better narrative that we can use, certainly in our company, but I think, just more broadly in the industry, that will appeal more to women. It's much more about connected energy. It's much more about, it's not about the box. It's about the transition. It's about what we're trying to do with our energy flow. What problems are we trying to solve? And I think there's a much more human way of telling that story, as opposed to the box or the tech or the car.
100%.
And that's really the space that I'm looking to take Pod Point into. How do we tell that story? How do we craft it? How do we bring it together and tell a different kind of story?
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Now, we have to pause here because we are over halfway through, and that means it's time for podcast pit stop. This is the quick fire round. Okay. 6 questions to each of you. Feel free to ask me one in return. No dithering.
Can't pass.
Straight.
Pass.
It's like
No, you actually
mastermind.
can't pass. No. And you haven't seen these beforehand, have you?
No.
Right,
it's
here we
why
go.
I'm both
Who am I
nervous.
picking on first? Bex. Work from home or office?
Office.
Everyone is saying that. MacBook or laptop?
Laptop. MacBook.
You know, or the other thing, you know what I'm talking about.
Mac.
Sandwich or salad?
Salad.
Teams or Zoom?
Neither.
Oh, you're on that blooming Google, what's it, aren't you? I can never make that work. Public transport or walk?
Walk.
Lifts or stairs?
Stairs.
Very exercise orientated for you.
Which
Mel,
is ironic, seeing how little I do. But yeah.
you sound good. Mel, lark or owl?
What did you just say?
Lark or owl? Early or late?
Oh, definitely. Oh, owl.
Owl. Work lunch or work dinner?
Oh, work dinner.
Why? Because you can drink?
Maybe. then you're just in that zone, aren't you? Then you're
You're
down
in
in you.
You're in zone.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you're
I
in zone.
digress.
Yeah.
Event name badges. Ever a good idea?
No.
No, I 100% agree. Handbag or rucksack?
So love a handbag, but I wear a rucksack for practical purposes. Otherwise, I would kill my shoulders.
Yes. Tights, are they ever a good idea?
Well, yes, sometimes.
Oh, you seem like you've got something specific in mind there. We're not going down that route. Pilates or weights?
Weights.
Okay. See? It was easy.
Yeah. that's-
And we're back. Bex,
Yes.
do you get pushback from men saying, oh, she's electric, that's not a very gender neutral thing, why can't we come?
A little, not very much. We get that more from women than we do from men,
Do you?
funnily enough.
Interesting.
Yes. And it's a mixture, really. So, and by the way, She's Electric events, anyone can come to them. I mean, again, the content it's more skewed towards what women might typically enjoy. But we get women bringing their partners, we get women bringing kids, we get all kinds of people turning up. But often we'll find it's women who say, what is the need for this? Why do we need this? I'm more than happy to go into a dealership. I don't have a problem. And I think often my response to that is just like, well, congratulations, and that's great, and that's fantastic that you don't, and that you haven't had a bad experience, or that you find everything's accessible for you, or that you're really, really interested in some of the more technical aspects of cars.
It's not the norm though, is it?
Fantastic. But yeah, that's where it tends to come from. And actually, just recently, and I did receive an email the other day from one of our community. We've got a community of, I think it's about over 10,000 women now. People. I think the majority of women. It's something like 97%. And she raised a really good point. She was sort of saying, I'm a mother of some teenage sons, and I'm concerned that we're overcorrecting here. I'm concerned that your content is too female oriented or what have you. Mm. And my response to that is always, as you would say, the data. So just sort of just show that when the data shows that these problems don't exist anymore, we shall move on, and perhaps She's Electric won't need to exist. But I just sort of responded to her and reassured her that this is about getting everyone to net zero, and it's just the fact that we're down here with some of these big decisions, like you were saying, it's about connected homes or energy. It's not just EVs, it's the big ticket items that we've just been excluded from the conversation for various different reasons. And it's not like one evil agent here that's done that. It's just the way that things have evolved. So it's just about leveling up. But yeah, I think that's where we
I
get.
can really relate to that. And I just think that one of the key learnings for me, having worked in energy transition, regardless of sector, is that there are no easy answers to any of the energy transition challenges. And that no one person, no one segment, no one company, no one slant is the answer. And so you need to mobilize so many different parts of kind of society, communities, industry to come together to solve. And it's one of the reasons I love the industry, because there are no easy answers, right? There literally are no easy answers. And it relies on relationships, it relies on collaboration, on innovation, on sparking different ideas. And so everyone needs to be engaged. So to your point, yeah, you need to have different perspectives.
But Mel, do you find, I remember talking to somebody else in the home charging space, and this was 18 months ago, and everything's moving on so fast, the landscape. But she was saying, she was a marketing director, and she was saying they found that women, again, if you were trying to sell in a home charging solution or explain a home charging solution, the women weren't in a lot of those conversations where they cohabited with a man, because the man, in the majority of instances that she came across, was in charge of the home utility bills and sorting all that out. And so if you were to go to a woman in a couple and say, have you thought about putting a home charger in, and it's really easy, and you need to go to your energy supplier as well and get an electric car tariff with a dual rate and so on. They'd be like, oh God, I don't even know where to start on that, because that's not something I normally do. Is there any gender imbalance that you find when you're talking to consumers?
I think the big thing goes back to what we were talking about before, is that the conversation at the moment is just very technical, it's very practical. And even if you look at, customer journeys, they're very practical. They respond, or they appeal to a certain way of thinking. And so I think the first thing is to broaden the narrative, to help have a different conversation. Through that different conversation, then you can channel different customer journeys that maybe are more gender neutral, right? Yeah. Certainly, I've been working in, mobility most of my life, and it's always been the norm that people feel it's much more masculine. Yeah. So even hydrocarbon, much more masculine. Women don't like service stations as much. All of those things. But the reality is, actually, you get underneath the skin, and women really like driving, but they like what driving gives them. It's the freedom. And I've never, every focus group I've ever done, women, they personalize that environment, and that environment means something to them. And it's the same as the home. So I think it's just about approaching it in a different way, so that people feel connected to, well, why does this matter? What's my role in this bit of energy transition? And even the energy transition, we talk about it, it's like this big thing, and it feels too big and too global and too out there. But if you can bring it back to community and home and people and family,
that word community,
matters,
that
right?
keeps popping up when people are talking about advertising campaigns, talking about social media, they're talking about local retailers. It's all about how you're activating in your community.
Yeah.
I think you also have to be realistic, though, in terms of what an individual is prepared to do, or the how they're going to frame any change that they want to make. I was at an event the other day, and we were talking about selfish altruism. So, this idea that, it used to be that we would talk about the planet as much as we would talk about people. And a lot of companies are now finding that they're having to put people far above planet, because it's sort of, the conversation is quite saturated. And also there's all those feelings, if you look at wildfires in LA, and obviously we're just coming off the inauguration, and what Trump's talking about, you can feel like I'm not going to be able to make a difference. So by flipping the narrative and actually talking about how you're going to feel if you make these changes, what does it mean for you? So with that She's Electric, as you'll know, questions about how much is it going to save me? How much time is it going to save me? Yeah. If you can bring it back down to, and particularly when it comes to women, to the personal, everyone wants to do the right thing. But we did some focus groups at the last She's Electric, and the difference between what someone will say when you're asking them online to fill in a questionnaire and what they will say in person. So we had, usually you have, I want to change the world for my grandchildren. Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. We were getting women into a room, doing Lego serious play, so getting them to imagine the future world. So you'd get these lovely grandmas who were like, oh, I know it's supposed to be about my grandchildren, but I just want to have a good time now. So you can just see that, everyone greenwashes themselves. So I think, you've got to be aware we're all selfish individuals at the end of the day.
We are horribly running out of time, and Mel, I really want to ask you about the International Justice Mission and the work you're doing for them, because that's just fascinating. And I love it where anywhere in automotive we have women that are also, oh, by the way, over here I do this as well. Can you just explain in a nutshell what that's about, why you're doing it?
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, when you were as a kid, you go, that's just not okay. There are causes you could get angry about, you changing the world from your shed. I love that. And I just think modern day slavery and human trafficking is one of those things. It's one of the fastest growing illegal industries, generating revenues that compare with international arms trading and the drug trade. And that's just not okay, because you can sell a woman or a child or a man many, many, many times over. You can sell a gram of coke once, and so it's really kind of growing as an industry, and that's not okay. And so the organization that I work with, they've been doing this now for 25 years. They are built on the insight that if we don't address justice systems, there is always impunity. So there will always be somebody to rob, steal, rape, exploit, if you don't have justice systems that work. And it works also for, if you put education money in, if you put money in to alleviate poverty or women's development, if you don't have a justice system that works, somebody will always be there to take it away or exploit. So we work with local justice systems to investigate, to rescue, to help prosecute, and then to work with aftercare.
And you're an NED, are you?
Yeah, and I'm an NED.
So how much time does that take up?
It really varies. So sometimes it'll be really hands-on, and it might take 5 or 6 hours a week, and then other times it's it's nothing. It's just turn up to the board meeting, but you are surrounded by such inspiring stories, like every time you engage with it, and it is so good for the soul. You just come away thinking, wow, I am so privileged to be able to contribute to the people who are doing that work.
Yes, that's just incredible.
So interesting from that giving back point of view, and I think that's one thing with the conversations around what women want at the moment that's going into that quite a lot, because there's obviously an obsession with wellness and self-care and all those things at the moment. One of the things that can actually make you feel the best about yourself is going out there and doing something. But at the moment, it's just very hard to understand where you should go and what you should do and how you can make action and help. So that's like massively inspiring. And I just, I think it's
You're
both
both
fantastic.
inspiring, which leads us neatly to our last little thing, which is tips and tricks. So, Bex, tips and tricks for women, parents of girls, anyone listening out there who's at the beginning of their career, middle of career, wants to do something completely different about founding your own business. We'll leave out the bit that you're doing it from a multi-generational household, and we'll just focus on founding your own business, one step at a time.
Live with your mother, because that is something that without that I wouldn't be doing any of this. Thanks very much, Mom. I think networks, something that I've only come to later in life, and it was a mistake to think that A, I'm the only one doing some of these things, or B, that I could do it all on my own. And only recently have I've joined things like the women's chapter, Female Founders Rise. It can become quite overwhelming, the amount of stuff that comes your way, but actually those very nurturing networks, and everyone just wants to help each other. It's just someone will ask a question, or someone needs some legal representation, or someone needs. It's almost like a bartering system that's kind of going on underground. But that would be my advice for anyone attempting anything, is just don't be afraid. Don't hide your ideas and don't hide everything into yourself. Get out there and talk about it, because there will be people who want to help you.
Thank you. And Mel, for anyone thinking about wanting to go into energy at the moment, electric vehicle space, charging companies, Pod Point, what are the kind of skills, what are the kind of mindsets that if you were hiring Pod Point at the moment you'd be looking for?
So I think it's what we spoke about before. Actually, every single skill is needed in this space to tackle challenges. So it's not about having a particular skill set. I think for me, it's more the mindset. So you talked about curiosity, absolutely. I think recognizing that this is quite an ambiguous and nascent space. So you won't necessarily have all the answers, but that's okay. So hence curiosity, innovation, resilience, collaboration, those are core skills that I think are so important if you want to come and work in the energy transition. And then leverage the networks. There are so many opportunities in the space. And I think, building those networks and having those connections can really help you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you
to everyone who's been listening. Like, subscribe, download your podcasts where you find them, and there's plenty more to come from Women in the Driving Seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.